Hello, welcome to Future Proofing Your Parking Operation, Best Practices for Navigating Multiple Technology Solutions. My name is Kristen Locke. I wanted to tell you a little bit about my parking background. I started at City of Fort Collins, Colorado Parking Services, and I still live in Fort Collins. I then worked at T2 Systems for a number of years. I did everything from product support to account management, sales engineer as well, helping prospective clients to understand, how they could best utilize the system for their business process, the different configurations that would be needed, territory rep as well. In 2018, I went to ParkMobile. During that time, I've been able to gain my CAP certification, and I work in the Western region as Senior Regional Sales Manager. A little bit about what ParkMobile does. We help over 20 million people find, reserve, and pay for parking across North America. We're the leading provider of mobile payments for parking. We offer both on-demand and prepaid parking options to enhance that customer experience and make parking more efficient. In addition to that, our platform integrates in the multiple systems that are in use for parking operations, allowing for you to have more efficient reporting and evaluation of your paid parking program. I wanted to say thank you to the Canadian Parking Association for hosting this virtual conference, and I'm excited to present to you on this topic. We are expanding on my article that was posted in the Parker second quarter edition, and it's under the same title, and this is just going to allow us to get into a couple more details, maybe some examples, rather than kind of the overview questions and options that I posed in that article. There exists a parking technology for every stage of the journey, and whether your parking patrons realize it or not, there's a lot that goes into putting together this journey for them to guide themselves to their parking destination, and even what might happen after they pay and park and potentially still, receive a citation. A parking operation takes a lot of time and effort in evaluating these different technologies and evaluating whether or not they can handle or have a need for each technology that's listed across the journey for a user. And even if you can only handle a couple of different options, there's a way that you can start and begin using new technologies and integrating them into your other technologies as you grow. So throughout these new technologies, there isn't a requirement that you have to start with coin-operated meters. You don't have to start from the beginning just because that's the beginning stage. You can jump ahead into an asset-light environment that is frictionless. The hardware is, license plate recognition, mobile or fixed, and you're able to realize efficient enforcement. It could be smart sensors, either in the ground or above head, that allow for your users to find parking. Maybe that's the goal that you're really trying to get at. And it could be even bringing together mobile payment platforms and having all of your paid parking synthesized into one platform and have your operations really see the efficiency of consolidated reporting. With all of the technologies that are available today, why wouldn't an organization, adopt a new technology? It could be different for each organization. It could be a hurdle like regulation changes, like those regulations have been in the books for a decade plus. Sometimes rules are in place to be able to procure systems, and that administrative, burden of trying to get through that process is something that you wanted to try to shy away from, and so you resisted getting ahead. And it could also be your staff, right? Personnel could be resistant to doing the work, willing to move forward. And, that could be because we've all been running so lean in our organizations for so long, we're a little bit burnt out. And it could be compromising us profitability wise and efficiency wise, still resisting those technologies. I do want to point out that it's important to adopt a new technology or we would risk falling behind. If we look at this graph here, the innovation adoption life cycle that's kind of placed against a Rogers bell curve, you see that the innovators and early adopters are fewer, right? They're not as many, and they're eager They're willing to take that risk. And with that, they can receive some benefits like pilot pricing, ability to provide feedback for the vendors to be able to refine the product in a way that would work better for many more organizations. And then you get into the early and late majority. So that's where the bulk of all of these organizations are going to fit, right? You're going to see some of your more influential organizations in your category or in your region that are adopting this technology, and it's really making you want to do it as well. And you're able to see the positive reference from the use of these technologies with the bulk of the early and late majority. And what you'd want to really prevent is being a laggard. You wouldn't want to let all of these technologies pass you by just for the sake of some of those challenges that I pointed out earlier about regulations or administrative burden, because you don't want to necessarily be the only organization that's not taking advantage of something. Like, are you still a parking organization that's using a cigar box? It wouldn't necessarily be in your best interest at this point in time, security wise and efficiency wise as well. And it's really, trying to get over the hurdle about failure. Failure is bound to happen. There's some examples that I posted on the screen here, like Juicero, a $700 machine that really just squeezes a pouch of juice that you could squeeze by hand. Or Google Glass, right? We all thought that was going to change the world. We were going to have be connected and be recording everything. And really, what it did was it ostracized those early adopters. They were thought of as, weird and not, normal. And so having that camera constantly on and worn on our body isn't yet something that we're all willing to take on. But the technologies that are in the parking industry are fairly low risk, and plenty of examples of successful deployments and referenceable customers. So is now the time for you to take on these new technologies? You bet. There's leaders throughout the industry that are innovating, and they have the option to customize their operation. You can do that too. There's an explosion of new technologies and many exciting opportunities in each sector that you are in, and it will really help you to manage the increasing parking demand. But adopting new technologies does come with a lot of pressure. So if you're in the market, like we're here to talk about, what should you be considering? So if we see here, this is the main topics that would help us to categorize and address the current needs and future goals of your operation. What would be the biggest challenge that your organization is facing today? And what are the items that are most important to your users that you have today? Or what would you want to add for your users to have a really consistent experience? Um, Will this solution integrate to other technologies? How important is that to your organization? And how important is it to make your team more efficient and be intuitive so that you can get their buy-in? And then also the goals and objectives down the road. Will this help us to adapt and grow and really kind of prepare for the future? These are all important things. And so what I wanted to do is to dig into some of the examples of each one of these sections and talk about that a little bit more. The first topic is current challenges. We've discussed a little bit about what you may already be facing with regulations, being behind on adopting technology, or staffing situations, but we would um, be remiss not to talk about current challenges and not bring up COVID-19. What we thought was a very temporary situation is longer lasting. And overall, we've all seen a reduction in parking activities and revenue that would be tied to those activities, which has affected funding and ultimately long-term planning. The audience of your parking locations actually has changed quite a bit as well. Uh, Contract parkers are not as highly demanding your services, so monthly garages are not as full. Commuters also aren't necessarily there, given the rise of working from home. And there has been an increase in beach and tourist activity, at least for some time during the summer. So some of those locations are seeing a higher demand for parking management than before, like corporate campuses where parking was largely unregulated, and now they're trying to manage the demand of all of the employees that could potentially be coming back to work a couple of days a week, and they may choose not to use transit. So this is really forcing single occupancy vehicles, and understandably, there isn't room for everybody at those locations. The other thing that's changed quite a bit is the use of the curb. Now, I won't pretend to be an expert of the curb or monetizing the curb, but if there's an understanding that the activities are changing at the curb. It's pick up and drop off. It's not so much paid parking. A lot of the paid parking is now blocked off for like in-street dining, extended off of the sidewalks. And that is some temporary situations that are going to be a bit hard to untangle. It would be interesting to note that, something that you would have to deal with is going to be maybe a longer term benefit to your organization, because as you look at overcoming these challenges, you can really use some of these items to help you in the future. So are we able to change the regulations and really kind of write these in as new rules with some benefits for the parking organization, like data collection, utilizing these companies or these systems to be able to have data for us about their use of the curb, as it relates to kind of like a give situation. Um, for monthly parking, what would we think of as maybe changing how you're offering paid parking at those locations? Is it possible that they would be wanting to do a prepaid transient reservation? So on a daily basis, they would pre-reserve their parking to ensure that they have a parking space available for themselves, or purchase multi-day permits so that they're able to come to work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And with these changes of how you're offering your different parking products, you could also look at different technology systems that could help you with that. So license plate recognition and a traditional parking access revenue control system would be able to handle time-based permits, allowing access in and out, whether you have a gate or not. The system would know the times that things are valid for and the days that things are valid for. And that could really streamline your operation more so than just your monthly invoicing of contracts and having that stagnant permit that's available for accessing your location 24/7. So that's something that you could really look at enhancing your operation. One way that you could overcome current challenges is potentially finding cost savings in your organization that could help you to afford some of these technologies. One example is lighting fixtures. So San Luis Obispo, California, for example, replaced 110 fixtures for an estimated 27,000 annual cost savings, and is looking to be 80% more efficient than their previous lighting fixtures. And so if you have money that can't be rolled over into next year's budget, is there something like that that you would be able to employ to help you be innovative in this day and age, but then also be able to afford it? Personnel costs is also something that's the highest up cost to an organization. Sometimes there's efficiencies that are realized with some of these technologies that you would be able to take advantage of, um, repurposing some of the staff salaries. So revenue control systems would alleviate potential need for booth attendants. Security systems, maybe through camera systems, would be able to have a remote command center that would allow for you to renegotiate some of your security contracts year over year and realize savings through that. And then as you're repurposing those salary allocations, you would be able to focus on a new position that is dedicated entirely to integrating all of these technologies together. That's a real skill set that's necessary in this day and age. And some of your current staff may not have that, but you would be able to advertise and seek a person that would be able to fill that position at your organization. Next on the list would be the user experience and expectations. So what do you want to portray to your users, and how do you want them to experience your parking organization? If we look at a ParkMobile customer survey that we did in 2018, we asked what was one word you would use to describe parking. And as you could see, the ones that are highlighted here in green are not always a positive connotation, and that's typical for what we would all know of how users think about parking. So let's bring up this Salesforce survey. that asked what a user's expectation was out of a technology, and 63% expect that technologies would provide new products and services, and then 70% expect that they're able to stay connected through their journey. So they're able to move from one place to another and still feel like they're connected. So, what could we offer our users that would mimic these results that they're desiring? One example could be self-releasing immobilization. It may be counterintuitive to think that anyone would have a positive experience coming out of a immobilized vehicle, but with self-releasing technologies, these innovations are bringing a great user experience. The user's in control of when they're making their payment and when they're able to release their device from their vehicle. You don't have to wait for the staff. There's no longer, really tense situations between staff and customers, potentially violent. And it's quick, easy, and effective. And oftentimes it doesn't actually cost the organization much more, as some of those fees could be, passed on to the violators. And then thinking of like the Disneyland of support, because that would be like the best user experience ever, is a video intercom system. So seeing a smiling face that appears to be nearby, but is actually remotely assisting that user, is a great innovation that could be used at your parking locations. Parking guests expect to enter and exit garages without any problems. And whenever there is a problem, they expect an immediate resolution. And so seeing that customer service is everywhere, all the time, and actually not anywhere close to them, would be a great experience to offer your users. Connected parking really plays into what your users are expecting out of the parking journey that they're taking. And the systems that are offered today really can help you manage that expectation. The parking patron would be able to use any system that you have in place to pay, and they would receive the correct information as it relates to your parking rules and regulations. Even with escalating rates, you would be able to have like kind of like a check-in between apps and payment and enforcement systems to ensure that the users are paying the correct amount based off of the time of day or the number of hours that they've parked. And really, the user wouldn't be able to notice anything different is happening, because the real-time integrations would happen in such a way that they wouldn't even notice there's a fraction of a second taken to just verify into the mothership about what rules should be enforced at that time of day. Similarly, you should be able to think of applying the same options across gated parking technologies, so crossing the border between on and off street systems and allowing for the same type of payment options that users have come to expect on street into your off street locations, and having that integration be something that's, easily added on based off of, the age of your park system, and having that integration take place. The seamless experience is more important than ever, even for your staff. So the dream of a platform to manage all of your technologies, have one place to make changes, never have an issue between systems, run reports, manage integrations, it's becoming a reality. And the vendors that you all are using today are creating their own vision of how this platform would work. And then you're really able to then choose the best system that would work for you and your organization, and thinking ahead to the future. There's always competition in the marketplace among vendors, and with that, it really is driving the innovation for this platform. Keep in mind that you should have an expectation that your vendors will work well together, because it's not likely that you will choose a vendor that's going to meet all of your needs for all of the different facets of your operation. Now, you may grow into some systems and use more of the modules that they offer, but as you're replacing hardware, you may have to make a decision on, kind of the goal and the focus of your operation. Are you going to go asset light? Are you going to, utilize a different technology because of a different innovation that they've come up with? And that could, cause your focus to shift for the platform that you're using. So as you're selecting a solution, or inevitably a combination of solutions, the way that they're integrating together and the way that they're capable of integrating together is important for you to kind of have a reference check on, because that will allow for you to make requests of these vendors in the future as you're wanting to take on new technologies. So if something comes out of the blue and you really want to, have it be displayed in your app, would you be able to do that based off of their past experience and integrations and their ability or willingness to display something or be innovative with clients like yourself, and seeing how you could leverage those future integrations for your operation? Thinking of all of the complexities of these systems, it's easy to get overwhelmed. And so when we thought about what we want to, evaluate as we're looking at a technology, it's how it can be most efficient and intuitive to our staff. So being overwhelmed or being confused is not necessarily what we were going for. So as you look through and you evaluate the technologies, you really do want to keep it simple, right? Keep the complexities and the confusion to a minimum. Systems today really have endless configuration options, and trying to ingest all of those right in the beginning is going to cause more confusion, and it'll delay your project. It'll maybe even derail it completely based off of, stakeholder that's not in agreement. Um, Here's the most efficient way, because that's the way you're most likely to be able to get the buy-in that you deserve, that you are requesting. And you can also then get the best bang for your buck immediately. If you're able to get your staff on board and you're getting all the approvals that you need because it's simple, it's obvious, it's effective, and you're able to kind of roll out that system the way you had planned. The other thing that you would want to take note of is complexities as it relates to needs versus wants. So while you may want to deploy a certain configuration set, you may not need to do that just yet. There could be certain um, things that trigger different complexities in your operation. And so in the back of your mind, you would want to consider, how you could roll something out in the future, just like this, like escalating rate. So do you need to have escalating rates right now, or is it something that you want? You're going to be able to streamline your implementation, knowing that escalating rates would be something you could do in the future, but not something that you have to think out every single scenario, right? Out the gate, right? You can keep it simple in the beginning and then know that this something that you desire or you're going to need in the future is going to be able to be met with your organization. One of our last topics that you want to consider is your 5 to 10 year plan, or things that you really want for the future. So while you're not going to be deploying those today, you're making a plan for yourself and your organization to be able to achieve those goals, and really see the benefits of all the hard work that you put into that. Sometimes it takes a step back in order to take a step forward. So do we need to like audit the systems, just kind of have a baseline of everything, potentially even engage with a consultant to allow you to kind of synthesize all this information together? Sometimes that's the most streamlined way of doing it based off of your staff constraints at the time. I mentioned before the timings and triggers, like with an escalating rate, whether you're able to set timing on that based on your occupancy levels. Sacramento, as you can see there, began their parking modernization program back in 2012, and they really laid out kind of a roadmap for themselves as they're going to take on new technology. Now, within this, they didn't explain exactly the technology that they were going to be taking on as they went through this, but it was able to kind of bridge the gap between taking it on right at that time and just planning for the future. Because understandably, when they set out in 2012, the last one on the list for special event pricing didn't even necessarily exist at the time. And so they took over, 7 years to get to that end stage. And by that time, those programs were innovated in such a way that it was what they wanted, or they were able to, request the innovation that they desired for their system. And then also, as you're looking at your planning, you're going to be able to rank your facility use based off of the priority. So we talked earlier about the curb, the demand on the curb for delivery and service vehicles, and use of the curb by people with disabilities, paid parking, rideshare. And then as you get down further and further, then you're able to kind of prioritize what would happen with those lesser of demanded parking facilities at your organization. So the planning is really important, thinking ahead and really kind of setting the stage for how you would desire to take on different parking technologies. And understandably, 10 years from now, you would have envisioned something that perfectly exists. In conclusion, I wanted to circle back to our questions that we posed initially about evaluating a new technology. Number one was about challenges that we face and how can we overcome those. And looking to the future, it's going to be about reducing our costs and then looking in different ways to boost our profits or find profits in varied ways than we have in the past. Number two was about the user experience. How are we connecting the user or making their user more uh, satisfied as they go along their parking journey? And really, it's going to be about faster and more reliable experiences. So quicker service and really letting the user have control over their options and also their control over the end result. Number three was about how are we seeing how these are integrated together, and the platform of the future that we speak of is here, and we're able to gain a greater transparency into our systems and see all of these systems interconnected to really benefit our operations. Number four was about how our staff is going to be able to handle these new technologies and become more efficient. And with use of enhanced systems or new technologies, we really will be able to see productivity boosts as well as efficiency increase across our staff. And number five is, what do we think about for the future and what is our 5 to 10 year plan, and really evaluating and planning the systems that we want to take on in the future is going to prevent any challenges that may have, come from taking on any technology. So some of those challenges that you may think of when you're choosing a technology is, have I chose the wrong technology, or did I receive enough training, or again, there's a resistance to change. And if we really follow through all of these questions, think thoughtfully about the outcome, we're going to see that the evaluation planning is really going to help us to future proof our organization and allow for us to take on new technologies in the future more so than we were ever, capable of before with older or more antiquated systems. I'd like to thank you for your time today, and we can go ahead and open it up to any questions. My information for contact is listed there, and yeah, we can start with questions. Does anyone have anything that they would like to ask?